In the land of 10,000 lakes, a remarkable movement was born. Welcome to Hometown Hero Outdoors. We are dedicated to honoring our military service members, veterans, and first responders by providing them with unforgettable outdoor recreational opportunities. We believe those who have served and sacrificed so much for our country and communities deserve a chance to reclaim their spirit and find healing in the great outdoors. This is Hometown Hero Outdoors.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast. We have a unique episode for you today. I know you guys have listened to a lot of these podcasts over the last couple of years, and we try to diversify the things that we do and we talk about. And, we've had a couple untraditional things outside of HHO, not specific to outdoors necessarily, but everything revolves around mental health to some extent. And today we have a special guest named Harrison Yount. I was introduced to Harrison through Relentless Defender, our mutual acquaintance that we have. And Harrison actually is a musician, and music speaks to people and has a place in their hearts where they can unwind and relax and be able to listen to music or create music and be able to reset empty their cup essentially, and to help with mental health. So Harrison, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. If you want to introduce yourself to the listeners, please do.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. As Chris said, my name's Harrison Yount. I'm the pedal steel guitar player for Cody Johnson. As he also mentioned, we met through Relentless Defender, company that does a whole lot of giving back to those who served, and I'm tied in with them, as is he. And he asked me to do this podcast. I'm excited to talk about some things. So
cool, yeah.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. I think what you do is really unique and cool, and I think you got a cool thing going here. So I appreciate being a part of it.
Yeah, no, it's a great organization, and we have a lot of fun doing it and helping people. Our goal is to keep people here on Earth with us and make sure that they can reconnect and be able to relate to others who might have been through something similar. And I think music's a big topic to that. A lot of our people love to go out to different music festivals and shows, and I think you said a name there that probably perked a few people up when you said Cody Johnson. So I will talk about all your history and how you got there, but why don't you just give everyone a little insight to what you do for the band with Cody Johnson, and maybe explain to some of the listeners. He's a pretty big name, so I think a lot of people know who he is, but why don't you just tell our listeners who Cody Johnson is and what you do with him?
Cody Johnson's a country singer, tours all over the world, mostly in the United States, but we've been to Australia, going to Brazil in less than a month, going back to Europe and going back to Australia in the future. And he's been doing this for a very, very long time. His history is actually, he was a prison guard before he was a country singer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's what he was doing before he got into music. He was also a bull rider and did a lot of rodeo, he's pretty famous for, his sport of rodeo and his love for it and everything. I got on with him about 6 years ago. As I said, I'm his pedal steel guitar player, which most people don't know what a pedal steel guitar is unless they're diehard country music fans. But
right, yeah,
some people call it a tabletop guitar or a slide guitar, but you play it flat and it sits on four legs and sits completely flat. You play it with a bar and picks and puts all that twang in country music. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing for him for a while, and he also has me play dobro, but I don't ever tell anybody that I'm a dobro player. I just tell them that I memorized the parts on that instrument and play the notes. I don't know what I'm actually doing when I play it.
Fake it till you make it, right, brother?
100% my goal whenever I get on stage with the dobro.
Well, that's cool. So with the guitar that you play, that you said it's on four legs, so that means you're not on your feet for the whole show.
Correct. I get made fun of for being the lazy one in the band because I get to sit the entire time, and the drummer, he's over there sweating and working out practically throughout the whole show, and I'm sitting there idle. So I have the easiest position on stage to get to kind of relax. My seat even has a back on it, so I can lean back and just, when I'm not playing, just kind of relax and take it all in,
stretch out and just chill. Yeah. No, that's cool. No, that's a pretty cool opportunity. How did you come across getting into that with Cody? I mean, tell us about your history in music and how you got there.
Well, it's kind of weird. Before I played with Cody, I played with another artist named Casey Musgraves, and she was based out of Nashville. I had moved up there to try and make it in music, and I got on with her relatively quick and toured with her for about a year. But after a year, I moved back to Texas, and I was actually pretty much throwing music out. I was done with it. I didn't really care for it, and truthfully, the passion I've always had, it was actually law enforcement. And actually, I always wanted to be a police officer.
Oh,
And
cool.
so when I moved back to Texas, I joined the police academy. And while I was there, you know, I was paying my way through it because it was a general academy. So I wasn't set up to go into any particular police department. It was just to get my certifications, and then I could apply to, you know, numerous departments. And so to pay my way through that, I was, you know, just playing random shows with random artists as like a hired gun. You know, whoever would hire me, I would go out there and play the bar scenes, a lot of those 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. you know, shows, and make $200 or $300 here and there, and paid my way through. But while I was in the academy, I got a message from a guy named Jody, who is our fiddle player and Cody's band leader. And he asked if I wanted to audition. And when I moved back to Texas, I had said that, you know, I was done with music unless I got a job with Cody Johnson. I could just, you know, back then he was starting to make headlines for what he was doing. He was one of the few guys who, you know, was playing traditional country music and kind of avoiding a little bit of the kind of like the bro country.
Yeah, the modern pop country.
Yeah, the stuff that was getting real popular. And I appreciated that. That was kind of my background in music that I enjoyed, and I could tell he was on an upward trajectory. And so I decided, you know, if I was going to tour, it would only be with him. And so I was definitely interested in auditioning, but I was also halfway through the academy. So I actually got a call from the tour manager while we were still talking about whether or not I would audition. And when he actually officially asked me to audition, I actually told him no. Because I just, like I said, I was pretty much done with music. I didn't want to go back into that industry. And, you know, I was really, really enjoying the police academy, which not a whole lot of people would say, but I was actually really getting a kick out of the academy. And, you know, but we had a conversation about it, and I kind of voiced some of my concerns to him, and they put those concerns at ease. And I went in and auditioned in Nashville. So the scary thing for me was, and the reason that I said no to auditioning, one of the many reasons I said no to auditioning, was because I was going to have to quit the academy to go even audition. You know, they have really strict attendance, you know, policies and everything.
Right.
I couldn't miss, you know, they wanted me to come out for 2 weeks. They wanted me to audition with the band and then go on a 2-week run with them and play a few shows. And I couldn't take off 2 weeks and not get kicked out of the academy. So I had to quit just to audition. So it was a little bit of a roll of the dice, because I could have gotten up there and they could have hated me, or I could have messed up and, you know, not gotten the job, and then I'd really be
Right.
in a bad way. But that didn't end up happening. And so when I flew out to Nashville, I played with the band for about a day. Cody wasn't there. Cody came in the second day, and we played, I think, a song or two, and Cody turned around and offered me the job. And so I've been, ever since. So
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, kind of the origin story there. So
knowing some of the right people in the right places, obviously, you know, the fiddler, so that helped.
I actually didn't know him. So basically, Instagram has been my best friend for the last decade, because basically when I started learning pedal steel, I wanted to post videos of myself playing it on social media and stuff, but I figured if I clogged my feed with like nothing but pedal steel posts, that people would get kind of annoyed. Just, you know, that's all I would post. And, you know, I was awful at it because I was just beginning. So, I mean, it just sounded like a dying cat or something, you know. Nobody would want to listen to that over and over again. And so just to avoid annoying all of my, you know, friends or followers or whatever on Instagram and Facebook, I decided that I'd make a separate account just specifically for my pedal steel stuff. So I named it Harrison Pedal Steel, and started making videos on there. Nobody else was posting videos, like pedal steel videos, back then.
No.
And so they got some traction. And I, you know, even before I started playing with Casey, you know, I was doing pedal steel for fun. I had no ambition of doing music for a career, really ever. But then I started getting phone calls from people who saw those videos, and they were asking me to come play with them. I didn't even know I could make money doing it. I used to get asked to come play for 4 hours for $40, and I was like, man, I can buy dinner and a tank of gas with that.
Yeah, right.
And,
Yeah.
so I was excited to get $40 back then, and went out and played. But as I got better, my videos started getting passed around a little bit more, and I started getting some bigger, more recognizable names reaching out to me. And I actually had somebody once send me a video of Willie Nelson watching one of my videos. And
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh my gosh, like that's just one of those things that your brain can't even process, because you never imagine that happening,
Right.
So that was kind of a cool thing. And so when I started with Casey Musgraves, I got that gig because somebody saw my videos, and her band leader saw them and asked me to come out and audition. And that was a weeks long audition, but I eventually got that. And then same thing after I moved back to Texas, I didn't know any of the guys in the Cody Johnson camp. And but my videos got passed around enough and got in front of the right people. And so again, thanks to Instagram, I got both my jobs with Casey Musgraves and Cody Johnson through social media, and my videos getting out there in front of people. So kind of got lucky.
Well, social media does open up doors for people, if you're doing the right thing and you get in front of the right people. We always say that you're one 7 to 10 second video away from fame. It's that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you said you're a Texas boy. So one thing we have in common is we're both born in San Antonio, and not a lot of our listeners know that I'm actually in Minnesota, but I was born in Texas. So you're born and raised in Texas and lived there most of your life?
Like, I can hear the northern in your accent a little bit. So you
yeah,
a long time, I think,
Yeah, it's when I come down to Texas though, and I spend a week with you guys, I come back and dropping y'alls all the time. So I pick it up pretty quick.
Yeah, I guess so. Sorry, what was your question? I missed it.
No, about just your history and your upbringing in Texas. Have you been there most of your life? I know you said did some time in Nashville.
Yeah. So I was born in San Antonio, as you mentioned, and moved up to Bernie, a little bit north of San Antonio, when I was, I think, 5 or 6, and spent all of my years growing up there. And when I was 18 and graduated high school, I didn't go very far. I just went to UTSA, went right up the road. It was 15 or 20 minutes from the house, and spent my first year there. And then transferred to Texas State for my second year. And that's kind of when music started, taking off. So I spent most of my time growing up in the San Antonio area, and then moved to Nashville for about 2 years, then came back here. And then my now fiance, she's in a medical program down here at UTRGV, which is, down here, way down here, right next to Mexico. And so I moved down here chasing her, and luckily that panned out. So we're getting married in April.
Oh, congratulations. It's exciting.
But moving back to San Antonio in about 3 weeks. So counting the days till that's happening. So,
that's a big move. You're headed up there now.
Yeah. I've moved around a lot. Lived in a whole lot of different places in Texas, lived in multiple places in Tennessee. And every different time I've moved, it's kind of like a fun adventure, but being down here in McAllen, I think I've had my fill after 2 years.
I believe you.
So
yeah, it's a lot with the border being there. A lot of stuff going on down there, and I'm sure a good change is needed.
Yeah.
Moving sucks though. It gets old. I was just talking about this other day with my buddies. Is I think the house that I'm currently in is the longest I lived in one spot since I've been 18. I probably have a dozen moves. I'm 40 now, and I've been in this house for 6 years. But moving sucks. I'm ready to not do it ever again. I'll probably have one more move when I downsize, and that's it. But good for you.
Yeah, I think it was my parents who were asking me to tally up all the number of times that I moved, and I think I was closer to 20 than 10. And I'm only 30. And so, for this next move, I've always moved by myself, rented a trailer, packed everything up, put it in there. And after moving that many times, I was just like, I'm just so done with it. So this time I actually hired movers to actually come do the heavy lifting, because
smart man.
Tired of doing it, So I hired them to move a couch when we moved into this house.
How old are you again?
30.
You're 30, yeah. So things start to hurt a little bit more when you hit that age.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, unfortunately.
Got to hire the young people, get things moved out for you. So that's awesome. So a lot of time in Texas, some
Yeah.
time in Tennessee, and you're in Nashville. I spent some time in Tennessee last year with my family. Absolutely cool state.
Yeah.
Very pretty as well. We went out to Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge area. We didn't make it to Nashville, but what was your experience like in Nashville at the music scene?
It's a lot different than it is now. We're in Nashville all the time, as you might expect. So I get to see how it's kind of evolving over time. And my time there was wonderful. As far as music went, that was, I had a unique experience in Nashville because, most people who go there, you're going there to grind and really try and, I mean, work your tail off to get, to a certain level and make a career out of what you love doing. And I went up there rolling the dice and had some financial, actually, I shouldn't say some, a lot of financial support from my dad in doing so, and helping me pursue that. And we said, let's give it 6 months, see how we feel after 6 months. And um, it was literally 6 months to the day that I moved that I got offered that job with Casey Musgraves. And so, that ended up working out for me. But I didn't have to go down and grind on Broadway a lot. In fact, I've played more shows on Broadway with, touring artists like Casey and Cody than I actually ever did with just the
Hmm.
bar bands down there. Um, I was in a house band down. It was just off of Broadway, so I played there a couple times a month. But I didn't spend a whole lot of time, grinding my way through Nashville. It was mostly networking and trying to work on my internet presence to try and get videos out there. I always tell people that social media is your best friend in this industry because you can make basically a resume for everyone to go look at as soon as they click on your profile and can see you're playing and hopefully get a taste of your personality on there. And as long as you're at least somewhat authentic with who you are on social media. And that ended up working out for me. And so I had a luxurious time in Nashville compared to most. And was kind of blessed with a touring job pretty quick after moving there. So, but the town itself is awesome. I really loved everything it had to offer, including a lot of, speaking of outdoors, there's a lot of areas where you didn't have to drive very far to go find a lake or a nice hiking trail or something, which is a little bit different than, how flat Texas tends to be. I'm from the hill country, but, a lot of the places that I've lived, you had to drive quite a ways to actually get outside and kind of enjoy what it had to offer. So,
Yeah.
from live music and things to do like socially in Nashville, there was it had a lot going for it. And me and my fiance have actually talked about potentially moving back there in the future, once she gets out of her program and stuff at the end of this year. So
Yeah, it's a good state. That's where I plan to retire one day. I want to move out to the Cumberland Gap area, out in the middle of nowhere. They don't have any state taxes there.
Yeah,
And then just get out in the hills. And I'm where I've grown up. It's very wooded, but very flat as well. And I love the topography that's out there, where you can get out and have some more diverse terrain and
yeah,
the hunting opportunities. Plus, the winters are a lot shorter. It doesn't
yeah,
get as hot. Texas is scorching hot. It seems
yeah.
like
It has
12.
all four seasons for sure. And
Yeah,
you mentioned the winters. It's like what it snows maybe a couple times a year there, at most. And
right.
and during the time that I lived there, I get a little bit risky with what I do for to be able to get outdoors. So it's like they had a blanket of snow and all the roads were iced over, and they were telling everybody to stay inside, and I was like, screw that, I want to go outside, enjoy
Right.
this. I drove out there to a Radnor Lake, and I was literally the only one out there, and I was passing all these cars and ditches and everything. I was like, I don't care, I want to go hiking this. So I decided to try and kind of do something stupid and risk my vehicle and potentially my life to get out there and
Yeah.
to hike around in that. But it was honestly one of the coolest hikes I ever did because it was so quiet and so isolated and unique.
All the tourists were staying at home. Those states do truly shut down when it gets a little bit of snow on the ground or too cold. They got a little ice that's forming anywhere. It does definitely shut things down in the south.
Right. Yeah.
That's cool. So going back to your musician career, you said that you started to learn your guitar when you were in college. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I actually didn't pick it up until my freshman year of college.
Okay. And then what was the interest in that? I mean, it sounds like it began as a hobby, if that's accurate, and began to grow from there. Why that specific instrument?
Um, I've never really been able to answer this question very well because honestly, it was just something that I thought was interesting, So there wasn't any kind of light bulb moment where I was just like, "That's the instrument for me," I grew up on country music and I listened to almost exclusively country music. It's very rare that there's anything else playing in my car and my headphones, and um, it's kind of funny when I was in high school. I used to I'd be on the bus with a friend of mine and we'd listen to music together and I would tell him like, listen to this crazy guitar solo. It sounds so wild. And I would always be picking out these pedal steel solos, not realizing that they weren't guitar solos. I didn't even know what the instrument was. I just thought
Huh.
it sounded really cool. And then I saw it in concert. And when I saw it, it was just kind of, interesting to me and caught my attention. And the more I kind of looked into it and learned about it, I thought that sounds, crazy and interesting. And we went and visited Nashville right after I graduated high school because my brother's in music as well. And so we went up there to kind of get a little taste of Music City and went out and saw Paul Franklin, who's just the world's greatest pedal steel player. He was playing with a group called the Time Jumpers down there in Nashville, and listening to him play was really just more convincing for me to want to start try and figure it out myself. And so again, talking about the generosity of my dad, while we were there, he bought me my first guitar and took it home and tried to learn it, and was, like I said, pretty awful at it, as anybody would be when they're starting an instrument. And found a guy in San Antonio who gave lessons, and I took a few from him, and the rest was pretty much self-taught. And after that, it was kind of, you know, that was kind of the story of getting started, and the rest was history, as they say. So
Well, it sounds like you did things the right way. You
yeah,
found what you were interested in, and then you stuck with it. And with your social media presence and stuff like that, it sounds like you opened up a lot of good doors, and it sounds like a lot of good opportunities, and being able to meet some pretty cool people. What does the touring situation look like? I mean, that's got to be a lot.
it's kind of different for each group, I think. And ours has changed a lot over the years. We used to have, I think when I started, we had two buses, and both those buses pulled a trailer, and we would be out for over a month at a time, sometimes. And um, I did more grinding as far as, working hard in this industry my first year or two with Cody than any other point that I've been in this job, really. Because we just have these long, pretty grueling runs, and he was still relatively up and coming when I first started. And so back then it was a little bit rougher, and as time went on and he got more well known and more successful and all that, the tour grew, and the amount of crew guys grew, the amount of buses and things grew. And now we're up to 4 buses and a couple semis. And our band we added one guy last year. So band's grown, crew's grown. I mean, everything is bigger now. And most of the time we're not gone for that long anymore.
Hmm.
The thing that is somewhat unique is I think that people have a certain idea in their head about what touring is like, as far as they think you go out, like you see like the shirts for a band that has all the dates on the back, you
Yeah,
know, and they think, oh, they go and knock those out in 3 or 4 months, and then that's the tour. Well, that's really not the case for us. We have all these dates that we play each year, but we tour year round. So we get a break in December. We play Las Vegas at the NFR each year,
hmm,
and after that, we get about a month off. But aside from that, we are out. Not every weekend. We usually get one weekend off a month, but we are out all year long. So we're doing a whole lot of, which this is a nice thing about growing, is we're flying a lot more than we're driving these days. We
that's
kind of
nice.
fly in and out from home. It used to be just you just stayed out there and never went home. So these days it's a little bit nicer, and I should say a lot of bit nicer. so we get to come home just about every week. And right now I'm on a little bit of a break, have this week off, and we'll go back out. I think we fly back out next Wednesday or Thursday and go up to Canada. Yeah, you're committing a lot of your life to this industry when you join a tour like this, because you're gonna miss a lot of things.
Right.
My fiance, as I mentioned earlier, is in the medical program. She graduates in December this year. We're in an NFR the day she graduates. So I've been with her throughout this whole program, and I don't get to see her graduate, which sucks. And
Yeah.
you miss birthdays and anniversaries and all that stuff. So you gotta. It's a commitment, and it's not quite as luxurious, and I think the reputation it has is a little bit off for what reality really is for those reasons. I mean, it's a great job. I mean, I love it. To call it a job is laughable, because we have so much fun out there. But
that's
those
good though.
can be rough. So
I think a lot of our listeners can relate to the fact of missing birthdays and holidays and stuff like that. Even I can, between military, law enforcement, other first responders, there's a lot of time they put in where they miss a lot of that too. So I think that's relatable on many aspects.
yeah.
Are you the only person who plays that instrument for the band?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they had like more than one, then you guys could rotate or whatnot.
No, it doesn't go anywhere. Out of the case, it's still like 50 pounds or something. It's a solid piece of instrument, so it's not very mobile. So there's just me, and I think some other guys are maybe curious about it at most, but it's just me. Most people don't want to play this instrument because it has the reputation, a very misleading reputation of being the most difficult instrument to learn. Which I have a big problem with that reputation, because I tried to learn like 6 other instruments before this and couldn't figure them out, but this one stuck. So I think it depends on the person personally, but that's just my opinion. So
that's interesting. No, it's a very unique instrument that you don't hear a lot about. And when we started talking and stuff, and I saw your email address with that, I started looking at it more, because I figured that's what you were playing. Yeah. Otherwise, why would it be in your email address?
Right.
Yeah, but it's a very unique instrument, a very unique sound, and it's a pretty cool instrument. So what are some of I know you talked about a little bit of the difficulties about being on the tour, missing different things. And at first you did a lot of grinding early on, and probably a lot of sleeping on the bus and doing overnight drives and stuff like that. But what are some of the difficulties that maybe you've encountered throughout that time?
Those are kind of the ones that the ones I touched on a few minutes ago. It's being away, and you brought it up about people being able to relate. I feel bad saying that, it's tough being away for,
no
amount of days when people are gone for 9 months or a year or whatever, being deployed. They're out there fighting for us. So I'm like, oh man, it's tough to get away from
no, and everyone's got their own perspective and different things in life, and everyone has a commitment, so it's not to take away from you or them. It's just, I think people can relate. They understand that. It's even me, working holidays, and I'm at home, but working holidays and being out, I'm a game warden, being on the river and stuff, and watching other families get to have fun while I have to be out and working enforcement. It's tough, but it's relatable in the sense that, you pursued a passion, and that does have sacrifices on the other end, like the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, I truthfully, to be completely honest about it, I think that being in this industry has been a challenge for my mental health more than anything. Is actually, I think, been harder than it has been a help to my mental health. And it's not really surprising when you look around and you see so many different artists in the news and stuff who, have problems, or, they're checking themselves into rehab, or, this and that. It's like it's so prevalent in our industry, and I was kind of wondered why that was. And now that I've been in it, I kind of see why. And a lot of it, I think, is born out of boredom, because there's a whole lot of sitting around doing nothing,
Right.
You don't have a car to be able to drive around, and you're just stuck on a bus for days at a time. And so I think people just get bored, and they, try and figure out how to make the day interesting, and they turn to things they shouldn't. And, so I think that's a big problem. But, I think the strain of being away from home and missing things and committing your life to something to where, there's not a whole lot of stability we don't choose when we go on the road. We don't choose when we come home. We don't choose how long we're home or how long we're on the road. It's a lot of our life is left up to somebody else. And those 2 hours we get to play on stage is kind of when we get to, shake that off and kind of have a release and get to enjoy it. But the other 98%, when we're just traveling or away from home, it can be rough. And it's really not super shocking when you see people get in a bad spot mentally or with addiction or anything like that in our industry, just because, there's just a lot of mental struggle with doing that, and
Right.
we're pretty lucky in the sense that, until we hired the guy last year, Seth Wilson on keys, I was the newest addition to the band, and I've been here for 5 years. There's not much turnover, and so we all get along. And, I would say for the most part, we can pretty much, if we're dealing with something, they're people that you can talk to about it.
That's good.
You don't have to just bury it and, count the days till you get home or, lose yourself in a bottle or anything,
That's good.
So, yeah, it's a brotherhood out there for sure. And, I don't think that, if a mental health struggle is ever brought up to Cody, it would not be ignored. I think everybody in our organization has struggled with it from one time to another. And he understands that. He's had his own struggles. And, so, if I had to sit him down and say that I was really having a rough time with it, I have no doubts that he would listen and
Good.
do what he did to help, alleviate that. So.
Hi, this is Phil, podcast producer for the Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast. I know your time is valuable, and we thank you for listening to our podcast. Can I ask you a favor? On whatever podcast platform you are listening to us on right now, could you please give us a 5-star review? It is very helpful when growing our podcast and expanding the message of HHO. Thank you. Now, here's a word from our sponsors. Voted Best Electrician 7 times between 2016 and 2022, O'Neill Electric was established in 2016 and is located in the Stillwater, Minnesota area. They provide commercial, industrial, and residential electrical installation and maintenance services. Their team strives to be the most helpful electrical contractor you'll ever work with, from the office to the field. Licensed and bonded in both Minnesota and Wisconsin. Go to their webpage at o'neillelectricmn.com. Founded in 1922, the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, MPPOA, is the largest association representing licensed peace officers in the state of Minnesota and fights to maintain the highest ethical standards in the profession. Licensed police officers with the MPPOA membership have access to the Legal Defense Fund, homeowner and auto insurance, have a voice in the Minnesota legislature, and more. Go to MPPOA.com for more information. Relentless Defender set out to design clothing apparel that police officers could wear with pride. They sell only top-of-the-line apparel, bringing you custom soft ink designs not found anywhere else. Relentless Defender makes it a priority to give back and donates a portion of all sales to various police charities. They stock all products and ship out same day whenever possible. Visit them at relentlessdefender.com.
Yeah, it's a tough business to be in, and many generations and of years with music, and people associate a lot of music with, they get out and they party. Some people don't, but people like to drink or turn to other chemicals, and
Yes.
I'm sure that's a part of that as well. It's just easy to get caught in the moment, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you can't get away from it. But
Right.
it's good to hear that Cody is that way. I watched his documentary right when it came out. Man, it's been a couple years now, I think. But he seemed like he's a pretty big family man. And I think that probably helps out a lot with what you're experiencing in your tour. That would be my guess anyway.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where, panic attacks come from or anything like that. They just can kind of pop up. But we were playing actually in Texas once, and I was having a panic attack just minutes before we went on stage for some reason. And he noticed, I was just kind of keeping to myself, but he asked if I was all right. And I just told him, I was like, I don't know why. I'm having like an anxiety attack right now. And, he he's always surrounded by 100 people, and he always has somewhere to be and something to work on. But he basically shooed them away and just sat there one-on-one with me, and we just talked for a couple minutes, and there's been times where he's prayed one-on-one with me, and he's never ignored that. If it's ever been a concern of anybody, he's never ignored it. He's addressed it, and he's been a part of trying to help with that. So
that's good.
Yeah, he's a good guy to work for.
I've had panic attacks, in the last couple of years. I know it, and that feeling of not knowing where it came from is tough. And it's not until like a few days after, or even weeks, where you really kind of can wrap your head around what happened. And then you think about all the things that added up to that point, and you're like, all right, got it. And they're not fun, not at all. But I'm glad he was there to help you with that.
Yeah, it's more aggravating than anything because you don't know where it comes from. You see a bear in the woods and you're on foot. It's like, you should have some anxiety.
Yeah, you know where it's coming from.
Yeah, but when you're just at work on an ordinary day and that comes up, you're like, what the hell? Why is this happening?
And you've done the same thing hundreds of times, and I've been fine every time. But why is it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, your bucket was full and you couldn't figure out why. I went through that this last spring, and it's a lot. But
yeah.
What are some of the highlights then in your career? What are the things that you will always forever stand out in your mind? Just give me a few top 3 or whatever.
Well, it's kind of those things that you stop appreciating after a while until you take some time to really think about it. But we live a really unique life that most people don't have the opportunity to experience the things that we experience. We do get to travel a lot. There's I'm surprised I haven't been to all 50 states yet. I think I'm at like 46 or something.
Oh,
wow. But never been to Alaska or Hawaii. Still got it. I think I'm gonna have to do those on my own because I don't think the country music scene is gonna take me down there.
Right.
Same with Maine, but I've seen almost the entire country, and as long as you pay attention to where you're going, you can get out and see parts of the state or part of the areas that you're playing, and that's always really cool and unique. There is no way I would have ever gone to Australia if it was not for this job. That was never on my mind, and I was honestly nervous to go on that trip. We were there for a month, and it feels like a different planet when you're on the other side of this one. And
right.
So it was a really cool and interesting experience, and getting to see the differences, not just in like culture, but like, in politics and stuff over there compared to the United States is interesting. And it was just, it was not the experience that I was expecting it to be in a very good way. I wasn't necessarily thinking we were going to go over there and have an awful time or anything. I just didn't know what to expect. And
right.
And so going over there and enjoying it so much was interesting. And, it's, that's definitely, I think, the biggest highlight for me is getting to do the traveling, because the shows tend to run together. It's like we when it's not festival season, which is right now, we stick to mostly playing like basketball arenas, and basketball arenas are all pretty much built the same. And so when you go in to play a show every day, people don't believe me when I say it, but I'm like, it's very routine. It feels like just going into an office, where you're going to a desk job. You just happen to have 15 or 20,000 people watching you do it.
Right. Yeah. Rinse and repeat.
Yeah. So they kind of run together. I mean, the shows, those 2 hours are a lot of fun, and some shows will stand out more than others as far as, how much, fun we have playing them. But we'll play hundreds of thousands of shows. And there'll only be a few of those that stick out. But when we get to go travel and see some cool places, that's definitely kind of the top of the list for me. And then we have the opportunity to meet some cool people, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because you never know who you're meeting.
Right.
When you're meeting a celebrity, you're kind of really hoping that they're going to be really cool and what their PR team has made them out to be, but you never know if that's who they actually are. And, I've gotten both sides of it. There have been guys that I've met that were awesome, and guys that I've met that I'm like, I kind of hope I never run into them again, So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, a double-edged sword with meeting people who are famous and stuff like that. But
I've met some celebrities, and I'm just like, wow, that's not what I expected at all, and for the better and for the worse. And it's you have this picture in your head of who they are based on what you said, the PR team and what's out there, and then you meet them, and you're just like, that is not what I expected. Yeah, that they're off my list now. But yeah, no, I hear you. I got there's another country music artist that I'm not going to say his name, that I got to meet, and I did not expect that interaction. It was a lot worse than I thought it was going to go. But you know what, though, I also got to understand that maybe they were just having a day. Who knows?
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's a super real thing. I mean, they're humans.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell everybody is that, you know, when you go and meet them, it's like people forget that they're human beings. They have bad days and they deal with their own stuff. And
totally,
you could catch them on a bad day. And most of the time, there's one female artist that, like you, I won't say the name of, but I gave her 3 chances. I met her 3 different times, and all 3 times she was awful. And so I was just like,
no.
There's no way you had a bad day 3 times, you know, separately. And it just happened to me each time I met you. This is just you, you know?
Yeah.
But it does make it nice when you actually meet, you know, the ones that are really, really great, you know. And it's what's kind of funny is in some aspects, I've actually avoided meeting my favorite celebrities because I'm like nervous that it'll just shatter my world, you know. If the artists I grew up listening to were just awful, you know.
Yeah, don't need that.
Yeah, that's unfortunately happened a couple times, and you know, there's only so much you can do. But I have friends that text me a lot of the time if they want to know what an artist is like because they're going to see them, or they might have an opportunity to meet them, you know. Because I've met a ton of them, and so they kind of want some you know, insight into if they're going to enjoy the meet before it happens or not. And I definitely enjoy giving them good news more than bad news of like, yeah, I wouldn't go to that show, or I wouldn't meet that artist, you know?
Right. So, I mean, you said you talked about Willie Nelson watching one of your shows or your videos that you made. Is there any celebrities that you've met or anyone like that you've been like, wow, that just happened?
George Strait. Was
cool.
Probably that. And it's been, I think I've met him twice, and both times is very brief. But both times, even after the short interactions I've had with him, it's kind of like, you know, he's the king of music. Everybody, I mean, you can go to the world and say his name and people know who he is. And that's pretty unique. I mean, it's like meeting the president or something. I mean, it's just one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, like everybody knows who this guy is, you know? And what's funny is I didn't become a George Strait fan until college. You know, he wasn't one of those guys that I grew up listening to. But I, you know, once I started listening to him, I didn't stop listening to him like everybody. And you know, so it's kind of funny to kind of start not listening to him until later in life, and then realize what a huge deal he is, and then get to meet him just a couple of years later. You know, and
that's cool.
Willie watching my videos, that was, you know, that was definitely wild. And it's kind of funny because I've always been around Willie, but I've never met him. I've played on a record with him, but I've never met him. I've opened shows, but I've never met him. And, you know, he watched that video because when the Casey Musgraves camp was considering hiring me, they wanted his input. And so they were showing him the videos. And so they sent me a video of him watching the video. And anyway, that was pretty crazy. But I've been within, you know, walking distance of him so many times, and I've never gotten to shake his hand or anything. And, you know, so that song that Cody, the duet that he did with Willie Nelson, you know, they recorded on different days. So when we went in there and laid down our parts, he wasn't there for it. So we've always just missed him.
Yeah.
But
I know one of the artists that I would love to meet someday is Chris Stapleton.
So, all right. So since you brought his name into it, you know, he's one of the good ones that I did get to meet. And you know, he's the name I tend to go to first when people say like, well, so who's somebody who's like cool? And I'm like, honestly, Stapleton was pretty awesome. I got to meet him a few times when I played with Casey, and you know, he's just a very genuine, nice guy, you know, and fun to talk to. And I always told people, I was like, to me, he always seemed like, you see like a picture of his Traveler album, and you're like, I just guarantee this guy spends his days just chopping down trees with his bare hands,
right?
Not playing music, you know.
Yeah,
he was just such a happy-go-lucky guy, and so easy to talk to. You know, he's just. It was a pleasure each time I got to talk to him. So that's if you get the chance to meet him, you should.
Yeah, I haven't made any of his shows yet. I've wanted to. I'm not a big concert person. I'll go occasionally. Crowds sometimes kind of rub me the wrong way at times. But
neither, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's just a little much, you know, overstimulating. But I love listening to good country, you know. And one of the shows that I got to go to was Aaron Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it was such a genuine show. And we were right up in the front row with him too. And he talked to us for a minute, and he was super nice. But that was a good show, but Chris Stapleton's one of them that's up there. I'd love to see Cody sometime. Then come see you play then, obviously.
Yeah,
so
anytime. Just
but
let
you
me
guys
know.
aren't supposed to be in Minnesota this fall?
Probably. I don't know. I tend to, honestly, it's like when I say they all run together, I mean, it's like I look at what time I need to be on the plane,
Yeah.
And where the bus is. And after that, I'm like, it's up to somebody else. And
Where are we going?
Yeah, it's like there's those jokes where like the artist has the wrong name of like where they're playing,
Yeah.
Thank you, hello, and they're actually in Pennsylvania. It's like,
oh yeah,
that's a real thing. That's
I believe it.
To where we go like, where are we today? So
yeah, it all blends together.
Yeah, we have some dates circled. Like I said, we're about to come up to Canada. That's a little bit different, and so that's kind of circled on the calendar coming up, and then Brazil's right after that, and so that one's circled on there. But the festivals and the arenas here in the U.S., you just make sure you get on the bus or on the plane, and after that, you kind of stop worrying about where you are.
You're right. Yeah. Out of all of the things that you've seen as well, we talked about some of the highs, some of the lows. What's the craziest thing that you've seen or that stands out to you?
Oh man, there's a couple things that come to mind, but the story that I typically tell when I get asked that question is actually in Dallas. I was living in San Antonio at the time, and I think the situation was that we were only playing one show that weekend. It was in Dallas, and the way it usually works if you're not flying is you have bus call, which is where everybody meets in a lot somewhere, parks their cars, and gets on the bus, and they leave and come back to the same spot. But if you're playing in Dallas, it's like we could either drive to where our bus call location was and then have the bus take us to the show, play the show, have the bus take us back to our car, and then drive home, or we can just drive to the show ourselves and drive back. So, in that situation, I was like, well, I'm just going to drive myself. So I drove my car there, and we played the show, and everything went fine, But at some point in the afternoon, I had gone out to get something out of my car, and I forgot to lock it.
Oh.
And so after the show ended, I had the help of some stagehands helping me wheel all my stuff out to my car. And at the time, I drove this, hatchback Ford Focus because it was the only thing I could afford. And so we opened it up and put everything in the car, and I loaded everything in the back seat and in the trunk. Say goodbye to everybody. And I was, practically shutting the door to my car when I realized that there was somebody in my passenger seat of the car. And this guy I'm kind of guessing here just based on some things that happened afterwards, but I'm guessing he had way too much to drink at the show. And then he had a fight with his significant other and wandered out into the parking lot and was trying to find a place to lie down and just started trying handles until he found one that opened.
Oh, wow.
He found mine. And so he went in there and laid the seat back and just went to sleep. And,
wow.
I couldn't wake him up. And I remember calling our tour manager because, a lot of the time, even back then, police are who's doing our security at these shows, which is the way that I prefer it, And so I called him and said, like, are there any police still around, He said, no, I just sent them all home. And I was like, perfect. Of course you did.
Of course.
Yeah. So I messaged the group and I said, like, there is some guy passed out in my car. And there's actually video of this. It's somewhere on my Instagram, but everybody I could see the buses from where my car was parked, but everyone just came flying off the bus, band, crew, Cody, everybody to come out here and check on this guy. And, nobody was about to come out there and beat him up or anything. We were just
right.
this weird thing that happened. And so, a couple of the guys, opened in the car and eventually got his eyes open and got him out of the car and woke him up, and he got back on his feet, and he was trying to fight the cars in the parking lot. He was trying to punch their mirrors and stuff. He didn't know what planet he was on. And I always thought it was really funny that this guy met Cody and the entire band and crew in one night. And there's no way he ever will remember it.
Yeah.
And,
could you imagine?
Yeah. So we put him on the curb, and, somebody took his phone and just called whoever the last person was on his phone, which we got a very angry female voice on the other end of it. And so that's why we kind of assumed he probably was not getting along with whoever he was dating that night. But we basically said, can we send this guy your way, And I always felt bad for this guy who pulled up because he was a driver. I don't know if he was Uber or what, if he was like an Uber black driver, because I think he drove like a Cadillac, it was like a really nice car. But he pulled up to us and just like, hey, does anybody need a ride? And we were like, actually. somebody does need a ride. You
Yeah.
know, you're going to regret asking us that question. You know,
No kidding.
so we gave him some cash and dropped that guy in his back seat, and we washed our hands after that and hope that he got back to whoever it was. But finding someone passed out in my car was one of the more interesting and kind of crazy things that happened at a show. But
No kidding. Wow.
but there's been a few different things. People trying to get on stage sometimes, which is you never know what that's about because people are just insane. And
if they're happy or if they're mad, who knows?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And this was kind of a funny incident, but we were just in the middle of a song and we have talkback microphones so that we can basically hit a switch and talk to each other on stage in a microphone without it going up front. And our bass player, Joey, just out of nowhere, we heard stage right, stage right, stage right. And we looked over and this girl had climbed up on stage and she was all done up in heels and she had her head down and she was just walking towards Cody like with a purpose,
Yeah.
We don't know what that purpose was, but she was also clearly really,
Inebriated. Yeah.
We didn't know what she was doing, but she got up there on stage because she had something to tell Cody and she needed to tell him right then. And so
it was super important.
Yeah. So security and tour management caught up with her before they even got out to him and got her off stage. But, just stuff like that happens. And you kind of talk about it for a couple minutes after the show and then you kind of forget about it. But, when you think about it, it's like, man, I would just never do that, So it's wild that somebody else out there, even in an inebriated state, would go, this is a good idea,
Well, like even these like sporting events, you see people go run across the field streaking or whatever. I'm like, what would have possessed you? I mean, I know some of them get bet a ton of money, but like still, like I don't think I'd be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would either. But there's so many things that happen at these shows. You hope it goes off without a problem, but there's been embarrassing times on stage where I did something that keeps me up at night still, and then there's times where you just remember the big fight that happened. There's because sometimes like just an all-out brawl would happen. And these days it happens less and less because we play these arenas and it's more seated stuff. But when you pile everybody in there shoulder to shoulder for 4 or 5 hours at a time,
they're all drinking and hot.
Yeah, somebody bumps your girlfriend the wrong way or whatever. They just start swinging at each other, and it's not something we tolerated at the shows. And, so Cody has a history of stopping the shows whenever that happens to call these people out, and especially because we have kids at our shows.
Right.
Women and children should not be around these behemoths who are swinging at each other, and
right.
causing a scene like that. But I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened over the years. And, honestly, I should start writing them all down so that in 15 or 20 years, I haven't forgotten them all, but
write a book.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you can do.
Yeah.
This is your financial cop, Money Minute.
Nothing starts with a plan unless you have a budget. You can't pay off debt, just like you can't really technically save for retirement and a vacation and other things without understanding what your budget is. And so I had to get a grasp of what my outflow versus my inflow was. And I kind of came to a realization that, we have this gift in law enforcement called overtime. Right.
Yep.
And far too many of us use overtime as a mechanism to elevate our standard of living. Well, I changed and said, you know what? We're going to use overtime to build our financial strength, and I'm going to use it to accelerate things.
This is your financial cop, Money Minute.
Well, yeah. So if anyone ever wants to meet Harrison and Cody and the band, just go find his car in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure you lock those doors now.
Yeah, pretty safe strategy. My car is almost never at a show anymore, thank God. But learn that lesson the hard way, and we tend to park backstage these days. So
yeah, smarter place to be. That's crazy. Yeah, that would kind of surprise me too.
Yeah, it was a little took me back a little bit, but
well, it's awesome, man. I know we're coming up on an hour here, so I appreciate you coming on the show. Is there anything that you specifically want to point out to the listeners or how they can maybe follow you on social media?
All my handles are Harrison Pedal Steel, one word. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I think it's a really cool thing that you're doing. And truthfully, I hope I can be a part of it again in the future in some form or fashion. And like I said, if you ever want to come out to the show, just send me a message.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When you get up to Minnesota again, I'll keep an eye open, see when you're here and shoot you a message, but that'd be super cool. Grab a beer if you get a minute or something like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to say thank you very much for coming on the show too. Like I told the listeners, a little bit more of a unique perspective on a different style of life, and I think it's awesome. And I'd love to do a follow-up podcast. I know you and I talked about briefly that you have some relatives that have served in the military as well that have some interesting careers that we could speak about, and I think that'd be a good follow-up podcast for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's through your fiance, and then I think you have.
Yeah, I have 2 grandfathers that served, an uncle that served, and then my fiance's father-in-law was a prisoner of war with John McCain, and is pretty famous for basically keeping him alive throughout that whole experience, until he was released. So it's a crazy story, and it's a really intimidating thing to learn about a family when you first start dating the girl. I'll tell you that too.
I can imagine that's pretty intense, but also it's got to be a very interesting life to dive into and to listen about. So that'd be a very good opportunity for a podcast if we're able to do that at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be glad to.
Well, congratulations on your engagement and
appreciate it.
And the big move coming up. But let's keep in touch, and maybe we can get your boss on the show with you one day.
Yeah, maybe so.
If he's not too busy. I know he's got a couple of things going on here and there.
Pretty busy, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's all right. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. And for all our listeners at Hometown Hero Outdoors, thanks for tuning in. Again, you can follow Harrison on his social media channels. Or obviously, if you're watching a Cody Johnson show, you'll see him out there on his guitar. And if you guys are ever having any mental health issues, 988 is the new phone number that you can use for mental health suicide crisis lines. So you can text it, you can call it, or you can reach out to Hometown Hero Outdoors. Our field staff are trained in what we call assist training, which is applied suicide intervention skills training. We're always here for you. Our phones are on, and we want to make sure you're here another day and for a long life to live. So please reach out to us in a time of need. But Harrison, thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate you, and we'll get you your day back and on to the relaxing for the rest of your day off.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Well, thank you very much. We'll see you. For all listeners, we'll see you next time.
The Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast is made possible by the following sponsors: O'Neill Electric Contractors, the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, Relentless Defender Apparel, and Financial Cop Financial Advisors. Thank you for listening to the Hometown Hero Outdoors podcast. For more information, visit our website at hometownherooutdoors.org.